we begin the sixth letter. The sixth letter is quoting Mishlei, Proverbs, from King Solomon. What does King Solomon say? Zerei tzedakah schar emes. Person that sows tzedakah has a reward of truth, which is suggesting that truth is something given from above. And likewise, it says in the prophet Micha, Titin emes Yaakov, that God gives truth to Jacob. Again, the suggestion that truth is something from above. The Alter Rebbe says we need to understand this. What does it mean that truth is coming from above and it's given to us? Jacob, Yaakov, our forefather, didn't have truth until God gave him truth. Isn't he a man of truth? So how do we understand that? So we can understand it by appreciating that Yaakov, Jacob, is the embodiment of Tiferes, of compassion, the attribute of compassion. His grandfather, Avraham, was the embodiment of chesed. Motivated by loving kindness, by love, he did acts of chesed, of loving kindness. His father, Yitzchak, on the other hand, was the embodiment of gevura, of strength, of power, of refrain. And therefore, and that was motivated by the awe of God. That was his unique and distinctive manner in divine service. Yaakov, compassion. Compassion. So what is this concept of compassion? Meaning serving God through compassion. So what compassion on what? Say Alter Rebbe explains. And this is a concept that we've learned previously in the third book, actually. And that is that God's inwardness, countenance, is distant from us because we are in a world of darkness, of vanities. And therefore, when a person will contemplate, meditate, and think about their connection to God, the greatness of God, and the more that we're capable of doing this, then the more we'll be able to actually have compassion. So he explains, how do you get there? What does that mean? So if we consider the fact, and this is something that we dealt with in the previous letter, so there's a connection, that all of creation is a mere single letter of God. Meaning, Gan Eden, the world to come, the spiritual world is created by the letter Yud, as we've explained previously, right? The letter Yud of God's name. And this world is created from the letter Hey. And as we explained, the letter Hey means that in speech, there's the body of speech and the form of speech. So the spiritual realm is created by the form of speech, of divine speech. The physical world is created by the matter of speech, which is Hey, the breath, as opposed to the pronunciation or the five organs that create five different types of pronunciations of the letters. Now, furthermore, that's, as we explained, was the beginning of the creative process, the one letter. That one letter then becomes combinations, substitutions of letters that are a conduit to create everything and all the multiplicity that there is in creation. The multitude, right? The multitudinous of creation. In other words, there's such a vast creation. And yet, before the essence of God, how is creation perceived? So God says, I, God, have not changed. Ani Hashem lo shanisi, as it says in the prophet. Meaning, before creation, there was only but God. After creation, there's only but God. Even though there are seemingly creation. There's a me, there's a you, there's a galaxy. But the fact is, God remains unaltered before and after creation. How do we understand that? Because all of creation is absolutely nothing before him. What does it mean, nothing? How do we understand? What does it mean, nothing? So the metaphor is the one letter. If it takes one letter for God to create the world, what is that in relationship, one letter, to a person? To the power of speech, it's nothing. To the power of thought, it's even less of something, because thought, we're constantly thinking. To the power of my soul, my emotions and intelligence of my soul, that's beyond speech, beyond a letter, beyond any form of language, it's absolutely nothing. So why do we use such an example? Just so at least we can have some kind of inkling. Because God, it's absolutely, creation is nothing before him. Just as one word is nothing to me, meaning not that the one word doesn't have a value, but the one letter or the one word in relation to me is insignificant. So creation is insignificant. What does it mean it's insignificant? What does that mean, insignificant? It's absolutely nothing before God. But there is something of great significance. Nothing. In other words, the effort for God to create the world, the importance of it. How important is one word to you in comparison to who you are? Totally insignificant. But there is something, and that is our soul, that is a part of God. That's a part of him. That's not one letter now. That is the creative force of all of the world. Right? Metaphorically, right? That's the metaphor, right? To appreciate its insignificance. How? Before God created the world, after he creates the world, there's only but him. It's completely nothing. Nothing in the sense that there's no other reality but him. And in the sense of value and importance, like one word, what kind of value does that have? But then there is something that's not what God does as creator, it's who he is. And he puts that into us, into our divine soul, that's a part of him. Now, this is what we need to have compassion over. This is what we need to appreciate, that we have a part of God in us. The rest of creation is insignificant. In other words, God's not a tree hugger, if I mentioned many times. And the rest of creation is only a means to an end. So, by the way, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be sensitive to that of creation. But we need to put it into proper perspective, compared to the neshama, to the soul that's a part of God. That's what we need to have compassion. He's not saying here to have compassion over, the nature of this world. We have to deal with it respectfully. But the compassion is over that piece that's in us, that's a part of him, that is now in a body that's like the hide of the snake is the metaphor, meaning that it can be like the snake, be impure, defiled by the lusts and things that and if it wasn't for God giving us, helping us to shield from that, giving us the strength that we can triumph and to shield over that. God gives us the strength that we can transcend the human condition. Can transcend the human condition, meaning the fact that our soul, a part of him, is in our body, and the rest of creation. That's today's teachings. So let's unpack it further. Let's appreciate. So first of all, to get our priorities straight of the value of an neshama, of a soul, being a part of God, and the rest of creation, it's not a part of God. It's a word of God. That's not the metaphor of being a part of. And therefore, what we should value, people, a neshama. Now, what does it mean with the rest? We need to be, what's the word? We need to be sensitive to the rest of creation, animals, to a tree. Previous Rebbe was 11 years old. In 1891, he was going with his father, the Rebbe, and they were discussing God's providence and how just in nature you can see the presence of God. And the 11-year-old boy, just, I guess maybe absent-mindedly, perhaps, I don't know, ripped a leaf off a tree and crumbled it in his hand. His father was aghast. He was very upset at him. Here we're talking about the presence of God, and he just, like, wantonly, just, rip a leaf from the tree. So what's the big deal? I mean, what was it created from? It doesn't mean we don't have a sensitivity. It wasn't to have compassion for the tree, though. Not tree huggers, to be compassionate of, but to be sensitive, yes, to God's creation, God's presence, because you just speak to him about God's presence, so we need to be sensitive towards that, absolutely. So you imagine how much more infinitely we have to have compassion over our soul that is a part of God, that is in the human condition in a huge struggle, and that in a body, in a world that we're driven into so many different ways and directions, and we need to overcome it, be triumphant in the human condition, as we and have compassion over that part in us that's a part of God. So the putting the value system in the right place is so crucial. That's one important point. And again, the whole of creation is but a letter so removed. Doesn't mean God's not present. God is extremely present in everything in the world, and we have to find that and see that, absolutely. But the engagement of it, the relevance is that I should be able to be triumphant and be able to perceive the presence of God in the world. That my soul should be, that I have, that's the compassion I have on my soul. That it can connect to the divine that there is around me, in the world, before me. So that's all a prelude in order to understand tomorrow about love and truth, and how all that we can sow the truth and it can sprout in our lives. But that will be for tomorrow. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts? Okay. Davida, could you do me a big favor? Please copy and paste the question, because I lost it on the feed. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Elisheva. Okay, if you don't mind, do that. Thank you. All right. Any questions, comments? God has thoughts, if so, and such as all-powerful. God has thoughts, right? That's the question that Julie is asking. I mean, thoughts. He doesn't have thoughts like we have thoughts. They're not human thoughts, right? In a brain. But they're the idea of thought. Speech is external, to express to another. Thought is the way I express myself to myself. So God has that which he expresses of himself, and that which he expresses, so to speak, outside of himself. Meaning that speech is a means to an end, and God is speech of creation is a means to an end, as opposed to the divine soul is an end in itself, a part of him. I hope that explained it. I brought it out more clearly. Okay. Any other questions? Clubhousers, have any questions? Todd, shalom from Lone Tree, Colorado. Robert from Boston. Okay, good. So just another word on this idea of compassion. Just think about it. That we have something so lofty in us that we that's what we're having compassion over. And as I've mentioned maybe a month or so ago, the compassion, compassion isn't like, I have compassion on myself and I'm forgiving of myself. That's not the idea here. The compassion is that we've got something lofty in us. We have such a potential in us, such a divinity in us, that sometimes we think about that. And that's what makes us really special. Because sometimes, think about it, we're feeling like, unaccomplished. We're feeling down. And so what's the compassion we have? I tried. I'm going to be forgiving. I'm going to have compassion on myself. I'm going to be self-forgiving. Aside from the fact, not exactly certain how we can forgive ourselves. Forgiveness has to come from the one that we, did something to. First of all. So, is that your divine soul that's being forgiving now? Because you did something to your divine soul? Probably not. But how that fluctuates, think about it. yesterday was a great day. Today, not starting off so great, and we're going to be down and out. So instead of focusing on the accomplishments, which doesn't mean at times we don't have to focus on that, and am I living up to my potential, or did I accomplish what I need to accomplish today? So the alternative is giving something that is much more powerful and much more an equal thing on our reality, and that is that at all times we have that divine soul in us that is in the human condition. That itself is a challenge, and the challenges of the lusts and desires that the human condition has, and our that we have within that. So it's appreciating that we've got something so powerful, so beautiful about us, as opposed to and that's what we're having compassion over, as opposed to having compassion over the negative things that I didn't accomplish, or the things that I didn't accomplish, and therefore the negativity. There's no negativity. I mean, it's based in something very beautiful and positive, the divinity of me, as opposed to, so yes, there's something negative, that the divinity of me is in a place of vanity, is in a place of human condition that is really challenging, and in that compassion, I'm thinking about how God gives me the power that I can triumph. Oh, that's what He wants. So that's really beautiful. And it takes away being down on ourselves and negative. Even though there's a certain downer over here, it's not a downer. It's uplifting. It's really, truly uplifting. Think about it. We've got something so unbelievable. All of creation is but a letter of, right? That is so totally insignificant. But I have a piece in me, of God in me, that is totally significant. Wow. All right, folks. We will continue on this thought tomorrow, so we can get to the truth. All right. I see no more questions. Beautiful. All right. Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Tanya. Journaling. I hope you're journaling, folks. This is something to journal about. And you didn't get your journal, it's not too late. Go to TanyaRabbi.com and sign up for your Tanya journal. Again, for the Neshama of Gila Bas Hillel, Neshama Shav and Aliyah. And we should have a wonderful day. God bless you, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.